Wadden TV presents the significance of today in our history.
This day in history, the 12th of February in the year 1502, Vasco da Gama sets sail from Lisbon, Portugal, on his second voyage to India.
Vasco da Gama might not be flattered by the way his descendants chose to honor him, but there isn't a great deal we know about him. He was born here in the late 1460s, but the exact date or year no one knows with certainty. The son of Sinas governor, he grew up in the castle that still dominates the town, but no one knows how long he stayed here. He probably had some seafaring experience, but why he came to command the first voyage to India is not entirely clear. There must have been something about this man that impressed Portugal's King Manuel. Whatever the reasons, his selection earned Vasco da Gama immortality in the history books.
This book of the fleets to India is very important because it's one of only 2 known copies where the fleets have been illustrated.
Professor Inácio Guerreiro is a leading authority on the enterprise of India.
Naturally, a book on the fleets to India should have the fleet of Vasco da Gama on its first page, which was the first to head that way. The fleet consisted of 4 large, square-sailed ships, or naus. In these drawings, we can see a flag with a cross, which indicates that this was Vasco da Gama's, the commander's ship. The ship São Rafael was built for this trip as well, and its commander was Paulo da Gama. Aside from this, there were 2 other ships, one of which was commanded by Nicolau Coelho. It was called the Berrio, and a store ship led by Gonçalo Nunes, which later had to be burned in Mossel Bay in South Africa.
In all, the fleet carried some 150 people, but only one of their accounts survives.
Only one eyewitness account is known, attributed to Álvaro Velho, who was a soldier on one of the ships. It is a diary of sorts, in which Velho wrote the most important events of the voyage, though he didn't do so every day. It is an extremely important account because it is the only one known and because it provides us with a very accurate description of Vasco da Gama's trip, especially in the outbound leg, which is more detailed than the return.
In the year 1554, Queen of England for 9 days, Lady Jane Grey is executed for treason.
Lady Jane Grey was considered a bright, engaging young woman with a sparkling intellect. Most women of the 16th century didn't exactly get much in the way of schooling. But because Jane's parents didn't have any sons, their daughter received nothing short of a princely education. By all accounts, Jane was an eager, enthusiastic student with a love of learning. She spoke 8 languages, including Arabic, Hebrew, Latin, Greek, French, and we presume English. Unlike many in the Tudor world, Lady Jane Grey probably had very little interest in becoming queen. The possibility was so distant she basically stood an equal chance of becoming an astronaut, and ruling simply wasn't her ambition. Considering how it all turned out, it's not hard to guess why. But when King Edward VI passed away on July 6, 1553, the newly established line of succession dictated that the crown be offered to Lady Jane. That offer might as well have come from an underlit Marlon Brando, because it literally could not be refused. Saying Jane was reluctant to accept would be a massive understatement. She reportedly fell to the ground and cried, citing her insufficiency for her new role. Jane apparently suspected the offer wasn't entirely legal as well, for when she did finally accept, she did so with a codicil, "If what has been given to me is lawfully mine." As you recall, Lady Jane had been pressured into marrying Guilford Dudley, who was a teenager as well, just 2 months before becoming queen. But regardless of how she may have felt about her new husband, she believed that he had no right to the throne. So when he asked to be named king, she refused, offering to make him a duke instead. This was seen as a pretty big insult. Beginning on July 19, 1553, Jane was imprisoned in the Tower of London. Her imprisonment lasted longer than her time on the throne. Not that it would last all that long either. Initially, the new Queen Mary believed that she might be able to spare Jane's life. It was clear to Mary that Jane was not a scheming usurper. Plus, they were related. Executing your cousin makes Christmas kind of awkward. Despite Mary's hope to spare Jane's life, everything changed when Sir Thomas Wyatt led a rebellion to protest Queen Mary's decision to marry a Spanish prince. And while Jane never endorsed the rebellion, her father, the Duke of Suffolk, did. He even joined the rebellion, and his action was a slap in the face to Queen Mary. Jane remained at the Tower of London for months while the new queen decided what to do with her. In February 1554, Mary finally decided that execution was the only answer for her cousin. Her Majesty's massive toolbox, Guilford Dudley, was executed the same day as his wife, February 12, 1554, and Jane actually witnessed his beheading from the window of her cell at the Tower of London. He finally received the royal treatment he'd been demanding. A few hours later, it was Jane's turn. Accounts indicate that she met her execution with dignity and resolve. Blindfolded, she momentarily panicked when she struggled to find the block on which to rest her head, and the executioner had to guide her to it. Her final words were said to have been, "Lord, into thy hands I command my spirit." Not bad, considering she'd never wanted to rule in the first place.
In the year 1742, Nana Fadnavis was born. He was a Maratha statesman who served in the Peshwa during the Third Battle of Panipat. He is very famous for his cleverness and intelligence. He also fought with Tipu Sultan.
यह बात है कोकण की। कोकण के श्रीवर्धन गांव में रहने वाले भट्ट और भानु घराने में काफी मैत्रीपूर्ण संबंध थे। भानु गांव के वतनदार थे और भट्ट श्रीवर्धन के देशमुख। बालाजी भट्ट जब पेशवा बने तो उन्होंने और उनके वंशज ने भानु परिवार को फडणवीस की जिम्मेदारी सौंप दी। सबसे पहले फडणवीस थे बालाजी महादजी भानु और उनके पोते थे बालाजी जनार्दन भानु, जिन्हें नाना भी कहा जाता था। नाना का जन्म सतारा में 12 फरवरी सन 1742 में हुआ। तब बालाजी बाजीराव पेशवा थे। विश्वासराव, माधवराव, नारायण राव और नाना सब साथ में सदाशिव भाव की देखरेख में पढ़ते थे। उस समय की पढ़ाई में ज्यादातर जोर अच्छी लिखावट और हिसाब किताब पे दिया जाता था। इसी के साथ रामायण और महाभारत की कथाएं सुनाना और राजनीति के पाठ पढ़ाना ये सब भी रहता था। लश्करी शिक्षा में घुड़सवारी, तलवारबाजी, बंदूक चलाना, सूर्य नमस्कार, दंड बैठक, कुश्ती ये कसरतें सख्ती से करनी पड़ती थी। नाना शारीरिक रूप से कमजोर थे। उनका ज्यादातर ध्यान पढ़ने लिखने और हिसाब किताब में रहता था। सदाशिव भाव के साथ रहकर उन्होंने दरबार के कामकाज को देखना और हिसाब किताब करना सीखा। सन 1756 में नाना के पिताजी के निधन के बाद पेशवाई की फडणवीसी नाना को मिली। अपनी बुद्धिमत्ता और चातुर्य से वे 14 साल की उम्र में ही फडणवीस बने। फडणवीस का काम होता था राज्य का हिसाब किताब देखना। उस जमाने के अर्थ मंत्री को फडणवीस कहते थे। 1761 में हुई पानीपत की लड़ाई से अपनी जान बचाकर कठिन हालातों का सामना करके नाना फडणवीस ने पानीपत की खबर पेशवा को बताई। नाना साहेब पेशवा के गुजर जाने के बाद नाना फडणवीस की जिम्मेदारी और भी बढ़ गई। थोरले माधवराव पेशवा ने मराठी सत्ता को फिर से मजबूत किया, जिसमें नाना फडणवीस का भी बड़ा हाथ था। पेशवा थोरले माधवराव क्षय रोग से अल्पकाल में ही चल बसे। तब नारायण राव पेशवा बने। सन 1773 में पेशवा नारायण राव का खून हो गया। उस समय नारायण राव की पत्नी गंगाबाई गर्भवती थी। तब नाना फडणवीस और उनके 12 साथियों ने उन्हें पुरंदर किले पर सुरक्षित रखा और इन्हीं 12 साथियों ने राज्य को संभाला। इन 12 लोगों को 12 भाई कहा जाता था। इनमें 12 राजनीयक थे। सखाराम बोकील, नाना फडणवीस, हरिपंत फडके, नारो अप्पाजी तुलसीबागवाले, महादजी शिंदे, तुकोजी होळकर, भावनाथ प्रतिनिधी, मालोजी घोरपडे, पापूजी नाईक, परशुराम पटवर्धन, गोविंदराव खासगीवाले और वेंकटराव पेठे। 18 अप्रैल सन 1774 को नारायण राव और उनकी पत्नी को पुत्र प्राप्ति हुई और वो पुत्र थे सवाई माधवराव, जो अपने आयु के 40वें दिन में ही पेशवा बने। उस समय 12 भाई राज्य का कार्यभार देखते थे। सवाई माधवराव की पढ़ाई की जिम्मेदारी नाना फडणवीस ने ली और फिर सवाई माधवराव ने नाना की मदद से पेशवाई को आगे बढ़ाया। नाना फडणवीस ने अपने जीवन काल में कई इमारतें बनवाई। इनमें से पुणे और वाई में स्थित नानावाड़ा और पुणे का विष्णु मंदिर प्रसिद्ध है। उन्होंने पेशवा माधवराव के काल में शनिवार वाड़े में भी कुछ बदलाव किए। 12 भाई के साथ नाना पेशवाओं के 3.5 शहारने में भी गिने जाते थे। 13 मार्च सन 1800 को इस चतुर और बुद्धिमान राजनीयक ने अंतिम सांस ली।
In the year 1879, first artificial ice rink in North America at Madison Square Garden, New York. In the year 1915, Adolf Hitler receives the relatively common Iron Cross second class for bravery in World War I.
The request was accepted, and on August 16th, he became a member of a Bavarian Reserve Regiment. 10 weeks of training followed. His regiment, called Regiment List, named after the commander, first saw action October 29, 1914, at the ongoing First Battle of Ypres. Now, this battle lasted for weeks and was a very bloody affair. Afterwards, in November, Hitler was promoted to corporal and was given an Iron Cross, though we don't know specifically why. It's quite likely that he won it for reliability, since he served mostly as a dispatch runner. Hitler strongly disapproved of the Christmas truce of 1914. The somewhat shy, ordinarily reserved soldier became a fanatic. Something like that cannot be at issue, he said, as German and British troops met in no man's land between the trenches and shook hands. Between March 1915 and September 1916, Hitler's regiment fought in the static warfare in the trenches of Formel. Now, they defended a front line about 2 kilometers long. After fighting in the Second Battle of Formel, Regiment List marched south and fought in the Battle of the Somme. Near Nebark, Hitler took shrapnel in his thigh. He would not return to active duty till March 1917. His regiment was stationed near Vimy and during the summer at Ypres. In September, Hitler took a 2-week vacation in Berlin. As he returned, his regiment moved to Champagne. We're now in October 1917. Half a year later, in May 1918, Hitler gained a regimental diploma and a wound badge for his bravery. His regiment then fought in the Second Battle of the Marne. Actually, by this point, German victory did not seem unlikely. The two-front war was finally over, and Eastern troops were being moved west to mount new offensives. Still running dispatches, often under heavy fire, Hitler won another Iron Cross in August 1918. But the German offensives ground to a halt. On the 8th of August, the day German General Ludendorff called the Black Day of the German Army, the Allied powers counterattacked. At the end of August, Hitler was sent to Nuremberg for specialist training to become a telephone operator. He took a second vacation in the middle of September and spent his time in Berlin again. After he returned to the front lines, his regiment was defeated the night of October 14th, where an Allied gas attack left Hitler nearly blind in a field hospital. His sight began to return in November, but still not even enough to read a newspaper. He was crushed by the German defeat in the war and what he considered the infamous Treaty of Versailles. But a big thing was that he now lost the feeling of unity, of belonging he had during the war.
In the year 1949, Team Canada beats Denmark 47-0 in hockey.